Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava
Bhagavatam ki jai. Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitam Sha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna Prabhu's Matajis, welcome to this morning's hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. But today we want to look specially at this limb of devotional service. We are looking at the Navavida Bhakti, the 9 types of devotional service. And last week I think Swami Prakash Prabhu spoke on Shravanam, which is the first, most important limb. If perfected, one can actually attain perfection. Any of these limbs, if we take, that Prahlad Maharaj brings up in 7th canto, I think it is the 23rd to 24th verse, he brings up the 9 aspects of devotional service, and this is also then repeated and given in the pastime of Ambarish Maharaj, right? Of course, he performed the various types of services, but these are also included there. And Shravanam is the most important. Hearing of Krishna Katha, especially from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the bona fide books, is the most important process that has to be followed in devotional service. Because the sense of hearing is what we develop when we develop in the stomach of our mother. This is written in the chapters of the unborn child. And also when Prahlad Maharaj is in the womb of his mother, this is also described that when we develop in the womb of our mother, it is the hearing, the sense of hearing that develops first. And when we are leaving our body, it is the sense of hearing that will last till the end. Sometimes when people are in coma, the doctor will always tell you, please go and say something to them. They will never tell you, go and show them something. They will say that, go and tell them something. Why? Because there is a belief that the sense of hearing is still very active. But for devotees, we do not stop at hearing. If you stop, well and good, you're perfect. But devotees reproduce what they have heard in the form of Kirtan, especially the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu actually focused a lot on Kirtan, and Prabhupada focused on Kirtan. Once Prabhupada was asked, what is ISKCON? Why did you create this organization? And everyone was expecting Prabhupada to give some organizational explanation or some very esoteric explanation of why he created this movement. But Prabhupada had a very simple explanation. He said, I created this movement so that you can chant Hare Krishna. That is all. The essence of our movement is simply to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And there was a letter that was written to Prabhupada by one of the temples in the early years. And in the letter, the devotees had said that we are not able to go out for Harinams and Kirtan because you have installed deities and it has become very difficult for us to manage the deities. We are not able to do deity worship. So we have stopped book distribution, we have stopped Harinams and Kirtan. And what did Prabhupada tell them? Close the temple. Stop the deity worship. You go out, you distribute books, and you do Harinam Sankirtan. He said, we are Sankirtan men. Our business is only to do Kirtan. And if there is compromise, everything else is non-consequential. Of course, now we're not going to close the center. Prabhupada always said that the Pancharatriki Vidhi and the Bhagavad Vidhi have to run in parallel lines. But he also told us that the Bhagavad Vidhi is always superior to the Pancharatriki Vidhi. Because we do not take up the spontaneous devotional service, Prabhupada says that because there may be some sahaja mentality, or there may be a mentality of uncleanliness, Prabhupada established everything else in our society simply so that we will be clean in our practice. Deity worship means cleanliness. Right? Prabhupada never said cleanliness is next to godliness. He said cleanliness is godliness. But then he also told us that the superior path is the path of the Bhagavatam. And what is the path of the Bhagavatam? Who spoke the Bhagavatam? Shukadeva Goswami. And when we look at the 9 limbs of devotional service, Shravanam is always associated with Parikshit Maharaj. Because he never spoke, he asked a few questions, but by hearing, he went back to Godhead. And in that same episode, the quality of Kirtan is attributed to Shukadeva Goswami. It is very interesting. You know, when I was acquainted with Bhagavatam initially, and then I heard this point that Shukadeva Goswami is the personality who represents Kirtan, I was very surprised. Because my notion of Kirtan is, when you sit down for Kirtan, you must have a mic, you must have kartals, you must have mridanga, and in this day and age, harmonium is also a must. If you don't have this, it is not considered Kirtan. Then as years go, you must have a mic for you, you must have a mic for your harmonium, you must have a mic for your mridanga, and you must have so many other paraphernalias, then that is considered Kirtan. But who is Kirtan attributed to? To a person who did not have a harmonium, who did not have kartals, who did not have a mic stand, and mind you, he was not even wearing clothes. Shukadeva Goswami did not have anything. The Acharyas could have attributed Kirtan to a person like Narada Muni. Of course, it is attributed to him also, right? But Narada Muni also is very simple. So Kirtan means one is performed by one who is absolutely not dependent on anyone but the name. He is not dependent on anything but Bhagavatam. In Bhagavatam class, because in Sundays we discuss about things which are not usually discussed. because this Sunday Bhagavatam class is for the serious practitioners. And in today's discussion, we will look and go back 5,000 years ago and 500 years ago to look at what Kirtan actually is or was. Because if we do not go back to the root of what Kirtanam is, then Kirtanam can actually be performed in a very wrong way. And then you will find that the effect of Kirtan will actually become diluted. And the effects of Kirtan that Prabhupada expected or Mahaprabhu expected will actually not be there. But before we look at that, we must understand what Kirtan is. And before we understand what Kirtan is, we must understand what sound is. Because Kirtan means you are making some sound. You are writing something. Prabhupada also said that his writing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the purpose, is also Kirtan. And those who go out to distribute these words, they are also performing Kirtan. So it is a kind of a transcendental propaganda, where we are going out and we are delivering the names and the glories of Krishna. Meaning to say, we are infecting the atmosphere with transcendental vibration. It is mentioned by Prabhupada and our other acharyas that Kirtan means war. It's very interesting. Kirtan means it is the war of the devotees. The Pandavas took up weapons to fight against the Kauravas. Because what were the Kauravas doing? They were infecting the atmosphere with negative propaganda. Anti-Bhagavatam, anti-Krishna conscious behavior and content. So the Pandavas were put there to reinfect the atmosphere, to fight the Kauravas, to push back the anti-Bhagavatam behavior. And Kirtan means we are fighting against the material environment, the material sound vibrations, to infect it with spiritual sound vibration. That is all that Kirtan is. That is why we are told, chant the holy names loudly with all our hearts. It is not that the Kirtan leader wants to hear that when I chant, you also should chant. Why we are being told chant loudly is because we are all collectively at war with the material atmosphere. So this sound vibration, sound is the sum and substance of our spiritual life. And even if you look at Brahma, when he creates this material cosmic manifestation, it is created from the seed of sound. We've always heard, right? There are many universes. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu will lie in each universe, and from his navel, Brahma will sprout. Some Brahma will have one head, some Brahma 4, some Brahma 10, some Brahma 100, some Brahma 1,000, right? Or even more than that, because it is skewed towards the complexity of each and every universe. But one thing is common. Whenever Brahma sits down on the lotus, there is a vibration, a very unique and specific vibration that is given to Brahma. And Brahma shares that with Vishwakarma. And Vishwakarma starts to create each and every aspect of the universe using that blueprint that comes from that vibration. So the quality of creation depends on the quality of the vibration. Brahma's sphere of influence is dictated by the sphere of his vibration. And if you look at us also, we are also mini Ishwaras, that we all say. We also create. And sometimes our creations, they create more trouble for us. We create something to try and optimize things, to make things simpler for us. Now there's AI. Everyone is speaking about AI. Why? Because they feel that will make our lives very easy. But the concept is very simple. Creation means it has to produce something and there must be a certain outcome. But Brahmaji tells us, if the quality of your vibration is not correct, then your creation will only cause trouble eventually. So the beauty and quality of all our creation, it must stem from the quality of our vibration. If in our life, our vibration is very negative, that means we are always speaking words that discourages us and discourages others, then we cannot expect that our creation will be good. This is very interesting point that we have to note. This came from Brahma's time. That means since the time of creation. And now the principle still remains. When we create in an organization or in our lives, we focus on so many things. The materials, the content that we take, right, the people we are associated with, but hardly we focus on the vibrations that we are being exposed to. During times of war, when a country wants to take over another country, you know what they take over first? They don't just go and bomb the country. If you read Japanese occupation of Singapore, the first thing the Japanese took over was the radio waves. They took over the radio stations and they started polluting the radio waves with their propaganda. So they said that your government has fallen and we have now taken over. The people who heard that, what happened to them? When you hear now, Tachud, God forbid, right, that some country has now taken over Singapore, you can be chanting. How will you feel? Happy? Hopefully not. Your hearts will break. The very core of your existence will break. What is going to happen? And when your heart breaks, the enemy comes in. Because you may have weapons, but the core is broken. And why was it broken? Because the vibration was changed. That's all. That is the root. So everyone who is intelligent has actually taken note of this. If I pollute the vibration, the sound waves, I will be able to pollute the atmosphere. So Kirtan means war. We are going for war against the material vibrations. So we saw how it can affect. And Prabhupada also writes, all these pandemics that are happening, these epidemics, these pandemics, drought. Prabhupada actually tells in one of his lectures that it is due to the quality of vibration. Prabhupada says that in Kali Yuga, one thing is very prominent, and that is the quality of lying. Prabhupada says that you go to a court, what are the people doing in the court? They are all lying. Everyone is lying. If you go to the hospital to sell the product, sometimes what do they tell you? If you have, let's say, a fracture, they will send you for 3 scans. Because the doctor is not sure, but he has an MBBS. But he needs a machine to tell him that something has gone wrong with you. And if you really find in our Kali Yuga, which are the jobs that are most glorified? If you are a doctor, if you are a lawyer, amazing. Right? But what essentially are these jobs? You're lying. Do you see? So we have accepted that lying means you are very smart. You see? But Prabhupada writes, because this lying is going on in our atmosphere, that is why we cannot be peaceful. Sometimes we casually ignore this fact. Vaishnava means Brahmana. If you are a Vaishnava, it is presupposed that you are a Brahmana. Right? If you are a Brahmana, you cannot presuppose that you are a Vaishnava, because you may not take up to Krishna consciousness. But if you are a Vaishnava, it presupposes you have to be a Brahmana. And Brahmana, what is the first quality besides forgiveness? Satya. You have to speak the truth. And what is the highest truth? The names of Krishna. Why are we told to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra 2.5 hours, 2 hours every day? People must be thinking, initially they thought, Prabhupada, what is this? 64 rounds we can't, then 32. 32 we can't, then 16. And Prabhupada explains that chanting means glorifying Krishna. But if we have not reached that stage, when we are chanting, we are not glorifying Krishna. Prabhupada tells us, even before coming into the stage of glorification, you know what chanting saves us from? Lying. For 2.5 hours out of 24 hours when we are chanting, do we get a chance to lie? When we are chanting Hare Krishna, what are we saying? You are supreme, I am your servant. Is that a lie? It cannot be a lie. That is the only truth in all of existence for all time. It is not relative, it is the only thing that is absolute. You are master, I am servant. You are supreme, I am servant. So for 2.5 hours, Kirtan or chanting forces us to speak the truth. Forget about devotion. It simply tells us that you are speaking the truth. After that 2.5 hours, whatever we do, it is guaranteed that at some point we will lie. You see? But the 2.5 hours, Prabhupada has given us that process that you simply just keep speaking the truth. And that is the meaning of Brahman. And that is the meaning of Vaishnava. One who speaks the truth. But we must now understand that we have spoken this is chanting. But how does chanting descend? What is the quality of the name of Krishna? The name of Krishna, one thing we must understand, it does not come from the material world. It does not. Why we always have a special feeling when we chant Kirtan, it is because it is descending from the spiritual realm. And anything that comes from the spiritual realm, we do not have the equipment to actually receive it. We actually don't. If, let's say, you are an astronaut, gone into the atmosphere, and you're coming back. When they come back, they simply cannot take out their astronomic suit and just go into the atmosphere. What do? They have to go into a chamber, they have to de-acclimatize themselves, and then for a few days they will be under monitoring, and then they come back into the atmosphere. So anything that comes from a higher atmosphere, if it's not from here, you have to have ways to build receptacles to actually receive it. When Ganga Devi came into the material atmosphere, could anyone receive her? Who received her? Lord Shiva. He had to be there as a receptacle to actually receive her. The holy names are even more transcendental, even more powerful, and even more gravitational than Ganga Devi. So, no ordinary person, or man or woman, can actually receive the holy name. The holy name does not come and someone is qualified to receive the holy name. The holy name comes into this world out of its own will. Krishna descends not because being obliged to someone. The holy name descends because the holy name wants to descend. And Krishna is known as Adokshaja. Adaha means beyond. Akshaja means the organic senses. Adokshaja means one who is beyond the range of the organic senses. And one of our senses is the sense of the speech. So if now Krishna is beyond the senses, then how is it that we are saying that when I chant, Krishna is already there? Adokshaja means he cannot be caught with our organic senses. And this is truth, this is Satya. So how does the holy name descend? The holy name descends, and the holy name, just as how Ganga Devi was looking where to land, and who did she catch? Lord Shiva, because he was there. The holy name is looking for a tongue that does not speak about anything but Krishna. It is looking. And the holy name will catch that tongue. And that person who only speaks about Krishna helplessly vibrates the holy name. And when he or she, that person, vibrates that holy name helplessly, right, beyond their control, what happens is the atmosphere becomes infected with that holy name. That ether, it becomes infected. And it touches our ear. And what is in our ear? The liquid. You know, there's a liquid in our ear. Our ear, if you study biology, you will find that it is half filled with liquid. That liquid starts to vibrate. If you remove that liquid, you won't be able to hear. It is only because of the vibration of that liquid you are able to hear. So the liquid vibrates. And when the liquid vibrates, it then in turn vibrates the ethereal substance that is in space. And in our body also there is ether. It vibrates that ether. And when it vibrates that ether, the mind is there. Mind is very subtle. And only the ether sound can touch the mind. And when that holy name touches the mind, what do we feel? We feel a difference. Then we hit the kartal, we take the harmonium, and we sway to the tune. 99% of living entities will leave it at that. That is where, you hear statements like, today's Kirtan was out of this world. Mind blowing. What blowing? Mind. That's all. And then we go back inspired, only to see that next morning I cannot wake up for Mangalarti. I have no days for reading Prabhupada's books 1-2 hours a day. I have so many problems. I have no days for chanting. But the Kirtan was mind blasting. But a Vaishnava will think deeper, and he will allow the name to sink into the intellect. And when it sinks into the intellect, all the Vedic revelations become known to that person. Kirtan alone is able to give you all the conclusions of the Vedic literature. Whatever Krishna wants to tell us, it is encapsulated in the Kirtan. That is the power of Kirtan. That is the power of Kirtan. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, illiterate, the only thing he knew was chanting. Only thing he knew was chanting. And the person he gave initiation to is known as the greatest scholar, Vaishnava scholar of our time, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj and he asked him for initiation, what did Babaji Maharaj tell him? No. Go. And that at that point in time, his entire being, and he writes with all humility, which was made up of pride, came crumbling down. Because he always thought that he was a scholar. He could write about astrology, he could bring out an entire calendar of what Vaishnavas are supposed to do. And here was a man who was simply holding his chanting beads and chanting, nothing. But when he heard that he's being rejected by this person, he completely lost it. And he says from that point in time, the real Kirtan started. The real Kirtan started. So when it comes into our intellect, the chanting, we know all the revelations. But our acharyas tell us that is also not enough. Because intellect is also a product of our material body, subtle body of course. And those who are really serious, this point is brought up by His Holiness Guru Govinda Maharaj. Guru Govinda Maharaj says that when you chant even your japa, it is like the child calling out to the mother. And he goes further to say, when the child calls out to the mother, it is calling out from its stomach, the core, the heart, because the child is completely helpless. Now that is a person who has allowed the name to sink into his or her very existence. That is the soul. It touches the soul. And as Maharaj is saying, from that point, the living entity calls out to Krishna. Krishna. That is known as the pure name. And in our lifetime, if we do not get to hear such a devotee chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, our life is actually wasted. Getting initiated in front of a fire sacrifice is actually not initiation. It is a formality. Prabhupada brings this point. This is not my point, this is Prabhupada's point. Prabhupada says that you have accepted me. We have now a relationship. You are chanting. You have heard me chanting. You are already initiated. The fire sacrifice, getting thread, is all formality. So what does this tell us? We must be hungry to hear from that person who has completely dedicated their life to Krishna. They don't speak lies, right? They don't speak anything but Krishna. If we do not have this opportunity, then the devotee's only business in this lifetime is to go and search for that person. We should actually drop everything else. Of course, those of you who have already such a person, then all glories to you. Because our life in our devotional life is already set. It is only for us to throw it away. Because we have heard such a person. So that kind of chanting, we have to expose ourselves to. Because chanting means it is not limited to material atmosphere. So the tongue can chant. The tongue is made of what? Water and earth. Every part of our body is made of the 5 elements. And there's always a permutation. Tongue is water and earth. And the electric signals that the nerves in the tongue sends to our brain, that is also material. Water is material, earth is material, and the electric signals that it sends, it is all material. So now, can the last person hear me? They can't hear me, right? If I remove this away, they are not able to hear me. So what am I trying to do? This sense, which is not powerful, I am trying to project it using another creation. But what is this created out of? Transcendence. It's better. So know one thing. Better mic, better harmonium, better kartal, better kirtan standards does not make better kirtan. Kirtan standard means what? That's also matter. Sometimes we lose our head. You know, when someone chants Nitai Gora Hari Bol at the end, I've seen devotees lose their mind. How can you chant this? Prabhupada never chanted this. And they chant Jai Gurudev before Prabhupada. Sometimes they also lose their mind. How can you do this? This is not. It is correct. It is correct. But that is not the goal of Kirtan. Sometimes we also get lost with Kirtan standards. Kirtan standards are also material. Did Mahaprabhu ever tell us how to chant the holy names? What was Mahaprabhu's standard? Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sahishuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. This is the only standard. This is the only Kirtan standard. But hardly we focus on this. But all other standards are there. And we are only focusing on standards, but we don't focus on how to become humble. We don't focus on that the holy name is not from the material atmosphere. This is how Maya tricks us. Even in a spiritual society, we complicate everything and we lose the essence. Prabhupada simply took 2 cows and he started chanting. Never spoke about standards, never spoke about anything. After that, he introduced very simple things. Just chant Hare Krishna. Don't complicate things too much. That's all he told us. But now there is so much of focus on standards. But real standard means we are completely humble and give all respects to others. Then we can receive the holy name. This is the meaning of Kirtanam. So just because we can extend the range of this does not mean the Kirtan becomes better. Because every other component that we have in our life is also material. So we must detect that which is spiritual. When Mahaprabhu dances, why does Mahaprabhu dance? Mahaprabhu dances because every name that Mahaprabhu chants is from his soul. And when he enters his ear, he is experiencing the quality, the ananda of the holy name. So he is experiencing that pleasure and he is distributing that pleasure to all living entities in this universe. That's all he's doing. This pleasure-seeking potency, it comes from there. So, in conclusion of this point, Kirtan or chanting of the holy names cannot be accessed by material senses. And Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is Adi Leela. This is verses 95 to 96. This purport should be the seminal force when we perform Kirtan. Because this is the point where Mahaprabhu is telling, they come and tell him that why are you always chanting Hare Krishna? Why are you always doing Kirtan? It's sentimental. And Mahaprabhu tells those devotees or persons that my spiritual master Ishwar Puri told me that I am a fool. I do not know anything. And I'm simply chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In that purport, Prabhupada writes this. He says, Lord Chaitanya never tried to be the master of the holy name. Now let that sink in for a while. Lord Chaitanya never tried to be the master of the holy name. Sometimes you know what we do? Introducing standards, in introducing different styles of Kirtan, in saying that only I am best at doing Kirtan, we are trying to become the masters of the holy name. But Prabhupada is very clear. Lord Chaitanya never tried to be the master of the holy name. Rather, he taught us how to be servants of the holy name. And then he says, if one chants the holy name of the Lord just to make a show, not knowing the secret of success, he may increase his bile secretion, but he will never attain chanting, never attain perfection in chanting the holy name. Can you imagine? Prabhupada is so heavy. He will increase his bile secretion. You know what is the meaning of increasing bile secretion? Bile secretion means your body is in the mode of passion. Kirtan is mind-blowing. The bile is being secreted and the modes of passion is increasing in the body. 99% of living entities who may touch Kirtan may tell you that this is known as advancement of Kirtan because the mind is simply blown. But Kirtan means it must be done minimally in the mode of goodness. Prabhupada says Kirtan means it must be completely pure. Even mode of goodness will not suffice. But he's saying at least Vaishnava means Brahmana. It must be done in the mode of goodness. And the bile secretion is reduced when you are in the mode of goodness. That is why Brahmanas, when you look at them, their tejas is different. Because the liquid that is released in their body is very regulated. Very regulated. Because what they eat is regulated, what they hear is very regulated, and what they chant is very regulated. When the priests in Perumal temple, when they keep chanting the mantras, do we get excited? After half an hour, we start feeling, I can't, right? I cannot do it. Why? Because we are not used to the mode of goodness. We get very restless. What is the priest chanting just mantras? Because the mantra is completely in the mode of goodness. Sometimes someone sits and just chants the same tune all the time. We start working out. Same tune, when he's going to change? When is it going to go fast? I'm saying this because when I grew up in Krishna consciousness, I had all these ideas in my mind. And it was only corrected by my spiritual master. And His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj. When I heard his lectures, Maharaj was always hammering on this point that Kirtan means glorification of Krishna. It cannot remain in the mode of darkness. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, I think it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but he liked to use this term, Kali Kirtan. Kirtan of Kali Yuga. This is very, very popular. And what he says has come true. Now what is popular? Clubbing. Is it wrong or right? I don't know. Because people are being exposed to chanting. We should always encourage chanting. But whether you will get love of God from those environments, it is a question mark. It is a question mark. So this is the seriousness that serious practitioners must get into. This is called Kirtanam, not to increase the bile secretions. So it vibrates the tongue of the pure devotee, and we saw how it Goswami is the example of this. And how did Shukadeva Goswami become the example of Kirtan? Shukadeva Goswami was a Mayavadi. When he came out, only after he heard Srimad Bhagawatam from Vyasadeva did he become a Vaishnava. So the first thing that Shukadeva Goswami did was to hear. And then he did Kirtan. So the standard that Shukadeva Goswami is, the first qualification is that Shukadeva Goswami heard from a pure source. That means in his lifetime, he had the great privilege of hearing one pure devotee, that is Vyasadeva. And what did he do after that? He kept to that standard. And he did not increase the paraphernalia. He felt that what I heard from my guru is what I will give. No food and water for 7 days. This was the austerity of Shukadeva Goswami. No clothes, hair disheveled, very dirty. So he was completely austere, he was completely renounced. And Bhagavatam writes, when Shukadeva Goswami was entering that arena where all the great sages were seated, who was he followed by? The children, the women, and the village folks. And what were they doing to him? They were making fun of him. They were saying that this is not high. But when he entered the arena where Parikshit Maharaj was seated, what happened? All the high caliber men stood up. Except for Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. Everyone stood up. Do you see the point? The common man could not appreciate Shukadeva Goswami. Only men who had standard could appreciate a true Kirtanya. This point we have to understand. Just because 1,000 people are following someone doesn't mean the pure name is coming out from there. Because the common man cannot appreciate real Kirtan. They cannot. 5,000 years ago it was the truth. Now also it is the truth. Common men cannot appreciate real Kirtan. Where you see pure devotees, you run to their Kirtan. Then now you may ask, Prabhu, then should I not come to the Gauranga center? Should I not do Kirtan? Wherever Kirtan is going on, we will sit, we will hear, we will chant. But our only request, Prabhupada's only request is, you always try to find out where a pure devotee is chanting. This we owe it to ourselves. Because if we do not get a glimpse of pure Kirtan, then our life actually is very wasted. We cannot be sentimental and emotional and stuck with organizational structures if we want to really push the limits of where we are at the moment. Again, we can discuss this in a Bhagavatam class. You cannot speak like this, to a class where new persons are coming. Because it is not possible. For them, you must have your bhajan clubbing. For them, you must have Kirtan that blows their mind. Because then they will come. That is the first point. So we must encourage preaching like that. Now it is not that now we will go and tell them, oh, this is not standard. We cannot tell. Devotees are working so hard to go out there. But we, who have been practicing for so many years, cannot stop there. We have to go a little further. And Prabhupada writes in 4.9.28, a Paramahamsa, a Arthavit is called a Paramahamsa. He describes Dhruva Maharaj. And he says, a Paramahamsa accepts only the active principle of everything. And he says that he accepts the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his life and soul, neglecting all external material. So every devotee must become an Arthavit. Arthavit means we accept the inner workings of each devotional paraphernalia. We take what is the essence. So Kirtan means what? Kirt is the root word of Kirtan. Kirt means to narrate or to glorify. What is Sankirtan? Sankirtan can be known in two ways. One, you do in the association of devotees. But actually the word sang, the root is samyak. Samyak means full. Full means you are doing with a full audience, a full crowd. But our acharyas tell us full has two meanings. Full crowd, full quality. That is known as Sankirtan. So mostly we may follow on full crowd. But they also tell us you have to follow on full quality. And the example is given of the horse. You know the horse, when you restrict it, it may not go to the place that the horse wants to go. You know, wild horse. You cannot check it by any material condition. It will just keep flowing. But when you unleash the horse will run freely. Same way the holy name. If we unleash the holy name without checking it with any material consideration or material intent, the holy name will run and it will purify us. And this is the meaning of samyak. We cannot check the holy name with material consideration. And in 1.6.20 of Bhagavatam, Narada Muni chanted the holy names in such a way. Namani Anantasya Hatha Trapa. The word Hatha Trapa, Bhagavatam tells us, being freed from all formalities of the material world. And such chanting, Guyani, is mysterious. Bhadrani, it is beneficial. And Prabhupada very interestingly in the translation, if you read, such chanting is beneficial. So he says there's only one type of chanting is beneficial, that is done without any social formalities. Social formality means what? Nice tune, good mic, good instrument, good kirtan singer, nice aircon, nice center. This is known as Hatha Trapa, social formalities. I mean, come on, if you go into a concert, let's say you attend, I don't know who, I used to know Michael Jackson. Okay, Michael Jackson, right? If in those days, he's not around anymore. If those days people attended a Michael Jackson concert, he had a sore throat, and he sang, say, like a donkey. Those people who paid the $150 ticket, what would they say? Please, I need a refund. Because according to social formality, if I pay you something, you better sing nicely. But we cannot bring that mentality to Kirtan. We have to be away from the social formality. Such Kirtan is Guyani. Very interesting, it is mysterious. You know why it is mysterious? Because such Kirtan is it's not heard, it's very rare. But such Kirtan is Bhadrani. Kirtanam Smaran. Gambaryatam Stushtamana. Then we become Gatas Privaha. Vimatsaraha. We become non-envious. Such Kirtan produces all these qualities that we are hankering after. Being satisfied, being non-envious. Simply by chanting, really we can achieve all this. But then we may be scratching our heads, but why is it not happening? Because we have not detected that quality holy name. So all our efforts should actually go towards that. So now in conclusion, we'll look at two things. One is an example, and the second is what we should do as devotees to detect such a quality of name. This is in 3.19.1. This is on Brahmaji. Avadharya Nirvyalikamritam Vachaha Prahasan Prema Garbena Tad Apangena So Agrahit. Thank you, Prabhu. I think we are bringing it up. If you move down, if you go to the word Nirvyalikamritam, Nirvyalika. So here it is said, after hearing Lord Brahma, right? Lord Brahma's speech, his Kirtan, is free from all sinful purposes. So when Lord Brahma spoke, his words did not have any sin. He did not speak to hurt anyone. He did not speak lies. He only spoke glorification of Krishna. And that is known as Nirvyalika. So when we are chanting Kirtan should not end with the 16 rounds or when we are at the center and when we are chanting Kirtan. It must continue. And what we must do is our speech must become Nirvyalika. And when it becomes Nirvyalika, what does it become? Amrita. It becomes nectarian. And if you look at the next word, Vachaha words, Prahasya, heartily laughing. Who was laughing? Krishna. Prema Garbhena. And Krishna looked at him with prema, with love. Tat Apangena, with a glance. And you see the last word, Agrahit. Such words are accepted by Krishna. Anything that falls outside of this, Krishna does not accept it. Agrahit, the word is there. We are not taking it from our pocket. It is there in Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is translating it. So if we are doing anything outside of this, then it is no fault of anyone that Krishna's glance is not falling on us. Nirvyalikamritam vachaha. The prema garbhena. How many of us are waiting for Krishna to look at us in a very loving way? All of us are waiting. Right? Whether we are pure, not pure, it doesn't matter, but we all have that hankering. And once Krishna has to look at me. And it's very simple. Nirvyalika. The words that we speak must be not with sinful intent. And Brahma also says, right, and this is in 3:15:23. He says that he speaks about the spiritual world. And then he goes on to tell his sons, my dear sons, I've spoken to you about Kirtan. I've chanted, I've spoken to you about the situation of the material universe. But I regret to inform you, my sons, it is very unfortunate that the common man is only attracted to Kukata. This is in 3:15:23. Right? Kukata, Prabhupada translates as bad words. Matitnihi means the words which kills our intelligence. And he says that because they are attracted to that, they are always in the mode of darkness. So Brahma is the standard of Kirtan. Because why? Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. Because he heard once in his life the pure sound. And he took it and his words were Nirvyalika. Because he simply tried to reproduce their words. And he did not speak Kukata. He did not speak bad words. So this is what we need to understand. And if we want to approach the holy names, maybe I was a bit heavy earlier about Kirtan standards. But now I'll come to the point where standards have to be followed. What Prabhupada has given us, it has to be followed. But, and this is a very big but, it cannot stop there. Because the real standard of Kirtan means Ataha Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhave Grayam Indriyahi. It cannot be touched by material senses. But Sevon Mukhe Hi Jiva Dau. Jiva means the tongue. But what is the word that precedes it? Seva. One must always be in service mode in order to appreciate Kirtan. If we are at the center, we must always bow and we must take up some service of cooking, of deity worship, of sweeping the floor, carrying the tables. If we don't do this, then we cannot get days for Kirtan. We cannot sit at home and tell that we must do Kirtan like Brahmanas. Doesn't work. If we cannot come to the temple to serve, then how will Brahmanical Kirtan come about? It cannot come about. It must only come if we are always serving. At home, if we are at our altar, if you see the altar is a bit dirty, let's clean the altar. That service attitude, Krishna actually appreciates very much. The deities are seeing Prema Garbhena. And the more we do service, with that service attitude, when we touch Kirtan, that Kirtan becomes very effective. And this is done. This one last pastime we'll look at and we'll conclude. This when Tamil, right? We used to hear about this pastimes of the Alvars. And there was one Alvar who was very famous for Kirtan. And his name is known as Tiruppan Alvar. Tiruppan Alvar was one of the Alvars who was very, very popular for his Kirtan. His name is Tiruppan. Pan comes from the caste that he belongs to. He comes from the caste known as Pannar. Right? Pannar are those people who simply go on the streets and they sing. And people will give them some money. So they are known as the backward caste. And I understand that even now, this caste in India, they are categorized as backward caste. I'm not sure, but I understood from someone, one of my devotee friends, even now they are backward caste because they don't do anything. They simply go out on the streets and they sing for some money. And usually they will sing the names of God. So this person who was born as a Shudra, lowest caste, he was a Pannar and he was singing the names of Krishna. And he lived in this city known as Srirangam. And you all must know this city. And he was not allowed into the temple of Lord Ranganath because he was a Shudra. So what he would do is that he would stand just outside. There was a river, there was like a pond. You know, South Indian temples in India, they have a pond. So he would stand on the other side of the pond and he would look at the Gopuram. And he would take whatever instrument he had and he used to do Kirtan for the Lord. He used to compose verses, he used to chant Krishna's names, and he used to cry when he is chanting. And people would think that he's crazy, right? And he used to chant. The first point here to be understood, that in the pastime, Tiruppan Alvar never complained once. I'm chanting so much, and I'm not allowed into the temple. Trinadapi suniche Vishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtan Harihi. What is the standard of Kirtan? This is the standard. The standard is he never complained. He never complained that people were performing injustice to him. He never ever complained one for himself. This is the first quality of a good Kirtaniya. A good Kirtaniya will never ever complain. That is first. The second thing is that he had some love for Krishna. That is also a great standard to have. So he was chanting, and at one point in time, there was the chief priest who was very ritualistic from Ranganath temple. He came out. His name was Lokasananda, and he was known as a Muni, Lokasananda Muni. He came out and they were taking water for Lord Ranganath. And at that point in time, Tiruppan Alvar was glorifying Krishna at that moment. And they would not allow him to stay for sunrise. Mind you, he has to leave by sunrise. They were so cruel to him.